Ci siamo, bene, grazie. Scusate, sì, è un po' in ritardo con le degustazioni. Intanto benvenuti alla degustazione di oggi. Il tema della degustazione è Frascati, il vulcano della capitale. Stiamo parlando di una zona unica, così come è unica tutta l'Italia. Stiamo parlando di una zona che è molto vicina alla capitale italiana, quindi molto vicina a Roma, e sui colli romani. È una zona di cultura millenaria per quanto riguarda e altamente vocata del mondo del vino. Noi, la zona di Frascati è una zona che vanta un modello, diciamo così, di agricoltura che si è molto adattato a quella che è la zona, no? Poi dove tutto viene prodotto, il vino in particolare, dove cresce la vigna. Questo perché, al di là della storia, che qualche cenno ve lo darò, ma a me piace sempre partire molto da quella che è la contemporaneità, cioè cosa stiamo vivendo adesso e se lo viviamo adesso perché lo stiamo vivendo. Innanzitutto cos'è che ci attrae molto ultimamente nei vini? La bellezza dei vini bianchi la cerchiamo benissimo, non solo nel corpo, no? Non abbiamo più quei vini così ciccioni come
which are too much full-bodied, let me say also fat, with a high sugar content. But we appreciate wines that are fresher, that contain more minerals, and with a greater identity. Frascati wines are wines of great identity. So why that? Because we have a history, and this is a territory that has always talked about wines, has always produced wines, and when I say always, I'm talking about hundreds of years in a territory which developed and changed over centuries, because this is a volcanic area. And there's always been various factors that in a certain way.
Pronto? Yes? Si sente, no?
Can you hear?
Sì? Ok, adesso grazie.
No, era sulla A, perché erano i miei.
Praticamente brillato, no?
So, because this forged this area. And over the years, over the centuries, there was a difficulty in communication. This is not a problem of today, of recent times. The problem with communication, if communication is not vertical, so very straight, for those not knowing about the place, well, they have problems. So we can have the first wine being served. So when we talk about the volcanic wines, so with these basaltic terroirs and with the magma and and also with the tufo and with the haze. So we understand that we have a unique terroir. And when we know that this terroir corresponds to a name, so very frequently we can talk about Etna, Etna wines. Etna is a volcano, the volcano, and around this volcano we have the production, the growing of grapes. A great wine, but also in Frascati, it was not only one volcano, it was a volcanic area which went through three different phases in these 1,000 years from so we're talking about 360 million years ago. And the last phase, 19 million years ago. And so therefore, we cannot identify it with just one name. This is an area, so it's difficult to identify it all. But what we are going to taste are very unique wines, where different factors make up and play in favor of quality. So the terroir, volcanic terroir, and in addition to this, in these years with the eruptions and the third phase with the hydromagmatic phase, the most implosive one, after which the volcanoes closed. So this brought to the fact that the layers and the areas, and it depends on the walls where the volcanoes were erupting, different geological areas, be very fragmented. This means the vineyard has a concentration, is a more basaltic concentration, another one more sandy, and another with more clay. But this in maybe 100 meters of distance or 400 meters of distance. So for this reason, this is a unique territory. So what was the other problem of communication of Frascati come to present time?
Scusate. Parlando con I produttori,
so talking with the producers, playing the major role in the production of the wines that we are about to taste, the problem was
della quantità,
the problem related to the quantity, not the quality. So in these areas, there was much production of wines, especially for exports, at a quality which was lower quality, but high production volumes. And this is not typical of this part of Italy, because I can bring the example of Verdicchio, L'Anfora, which were exported all around the world, and everybody were investing in the Marche region in order to have a label, that have the Anfora wine, Fiasco, Chianti Fiasco, all around the world. And then also it takes time to recover a certain type of market, but also Valpolicella wine. And here we're talking about the 60s and 70s. The difference between these areas, the Frascati area, is the fact that these areas started well in advance, well earlier, to talk about quality, to enhance quality instead of quantity, and going through a rebranding of the whole territory. And so they started well in advance to work on it. And this is something that is currently happening in Frascati, in the Frascati area. The DOCG helped this process of Frascati Superiore. It was established in 2011, very recent, and we are talking about a DOCG which is just 11 years old. A DOC, a controlled origin and denomination, that was established in 1966, where we had a new to make it more current. And in any case, we are talking about only 11 years of existence as a DOCG. What we see in the wines that we are about to taste is the fact that many of these wineries started before the certification of the OCG, and they started working on I'm talking about the municipalities Monteporzio, Fraccatone, and Frascati. they started working on quality beyond the DOCG, and many of these wines GT, so because there was no protection of these specifications. So the terroirs, we will talk about this with the tasting of the wines. So what about the climate? Well, this is very interesting. It's very interesting to talk about climate, Frascati. Why? Because when we talk about climate, well, Frascati's climate varies according to the altitude and the extension of the area. So here we have a countryside climate up to 100 meters above the sea, up to 500 meters above the sea level. Minimum temperatures are similar to that of Rome, and maximum temperatures are low. What is interesting here is that on the hills, there is controlled humidity, very low humidity. So we almost have no humidity, also thanks to the wind blowing from the sea. Because we should not forget that this area in the province of Rome is very close to the side and borders with the municipalities of on the sea, and the Eur district of Rome is just 10 kilometers from the sea. So the Ponino wind, which comes from the Tirreno Sea and blows towards the city, and from the sea it goes up, crosses the city, and the first hills are the hills of the Roman hills, including Frascati. So another interesting thing, and here the man comes. So the eco monsters made it possible for the wind to change direction, and so the wind does not blow in the same direction as before. And I may mention the horizontal skyscraper, called also Corviali, on the Aurelius Road, and the project started in 1972, and it is I'm talking about a building, a skyscraper, which is almost 1 kilometer long. So with the residences, and I believe it is a 12-story building. This block hampers and blocks the wind and makes the wind change direction. This is an eco monster because in 1986, the construction was blocked, was suspended, discontinued, and so therefore this is like a beehive, a cement beehive. So everything changed. So talking about the right climate and trying to understand the reason why it changed, well, often this is not only because we are experiencing climate change. Very frequently, we should consider how that area can change also as a result of the constructions. And this is a crystal clear example. So let's start with the wines so that we can together, because we started a bit late, but we need to leave the room at the right time. So the first wine.
Il nome di questo primo vino,
so the name of the first wine
BioWine,
is
la cantina
BioWine. The winery is San Marco.
Questa cantina ha davvero una bella storia.
Winery has a history behind. because it's the combination of two families who
ma che
aren't in
intorno
the
agli
area
anni
of Frascati,
70
but
si
who
conoscono, sono la famiglia
around
Notar Nicola e Violo,
they called the
che
Notar
si
Nicola and Violo,
conoscono
so they
e
met
decidono
in
di
the 1990s
investire
and
a
decided to
Frascati.
invest in
Fra l'altro già
Frascati.
vengono
And by
da
the way,
un
they
mondo
come already
agricolo,
from
vitivinicolo,
the
perché
wine
da due
area,
regioni
because
molto
they
vocate
actually come
italiane che sono
from
il
two regions,
Piemonte
which
e
are
la Puglia,
Piedmont and
e
Apulia, which are two
decidono
wine
di
regions.
acquistare
And they
lì
decided
un
to buy
piccolo
a
terreno. Il
small
primo immobile era
plot
grande
of
soltanto
land,
16 metri
and
quadrati
the first building was
e
just
iniziano
60.
a fare
And they
una
started
politica
immediately
che,
to
visto quello che vi ho detto
embrace a
prima, cioè si
policy, a
veniva da un
strategy,
periodo,
and
si
told
stava
you
già lavorando in quel periodo ancora di una
in those
quantità a
days we were
discapito
still
della qualità, il che vuol dire
working
anche tradotto
by
le uve
focusing
ai
on
conferitori venivano pagate
quality
molto
instead
poco
of
per poter poi
quantity,
tenere un
and
prezzo di mercato di un
so
certo tipo.
the
Invece loro iniziano
the grapes was
subito
paid very
a
little,
fare
and
un
so they started to do
lavoro
the
molto
opposite. So they
etico
decided
e a
to work very
pagare
ethically
giusto,
and paid a
diciamo
fair
così,
price
le uve ai
for the
conferitori.
grapes
E
to
vi
the
parlo intorno al
growers.
70,
This
insomma
is
dopo,
back in the
dopo il
70s,
72.
72.
Ad oggi mi raccontano
And
che
they
i
tell me
conferitori,
today
fra
that the
l'altro,
wine growers
sono molto giovani,
are
perché
now very
anche lì,
young,
in questa
because
zona,
also in
da
this
qualche parte,
area
da quando poi c'è stato
recently,
questo rilancio
from
del
when we had
Frascati,
this
questa DOCG
relaunch of
che ha
Frascati, the
ridato, come
DOCG that
dire,
has
una scossa a quello che è la
revived
qualità già
the
esistente del
quality
luogo,
of
ok? Perché
this
ricordiamoci
place,
sempre che stiamo parlando di un luogo
because always
vulcanico,
remember this is
è
a
un luogo
volcanic
che non
soil
soffre di
that
umidità,
doesn't suffer
vengono dal
any
mare,
humidity,
siamo a una delle
winds blowing
parti
from the
è
sea,
verso
and
come
this is
dire,
an
l'affaccio
area
verso l'Abruzzo,
facing
quindi una regione altamente
Abruzzo,
appenninica
that is
in cui si
a
riesce
region with
riescono ad arrivare
Apennines and
anche i
hills.
venti più
And so we
freddi
also
e
have
più
cold
freschi in
winds,
inverno,
fresh
no?
winds in
E c'è un
wintertime.
rilancio proprio di
And so
giovani. Quindi un cambio
new
generazionale, ma questo lo stiamo vedendo
relaunch
un po' in
with
tutto il
young
mondo, non
winemakers.
soltanto nel
However,
mondo
this happens
vitivinicolo e
not
italiano, ma
just
in
in
tutto il
Italy,
mondo, in
but
cui
in
i
many other
giovani
regions.
lasciano le
So
città per tornare ad
young
occuparsi
people
della terra.
leave the
E questa
cities
cosa
and go back to the
Frascati la
land,
stanno vivendo
to
molto.
farming. This is something that
L'azienda si
in
chiama
Frascati
quindi
is very
il vino
common.
BioWine, che fra l'altro
Wine,
è un marchio che
the
loro
name,
hanno
the BioWine is a
registrato
brand
poi
they
se vedete potete venire a
registered.
vedere la bottiglia.
If you like, you
Vedete
can
la
come
R,
see
cioè di
the
registro,
bottle, and we see the
perché
small
non è
R,
soltanto
which
il nome
means
di
that
un
the brand
vino, ma
was
è una vera e
registered,
propria
as it's not just
filosofia per
the
loro.
name of the
Loro
wine, but it's
iniziano
a
con la
philosophy to them. They
criomacerazione,
started working with
quindi con un
cryomaceration,
rispetto molto
and therefore
alto verso
they
queste
respect
uve,
to the
perché
grapes,
ricordiamoci
because
qual è l'uva principe
what is
da disciplinare
main
del
variety
Frascati
in
superiore
Frascati
DOCG
superiore
è la
DOCG. It's
Malvasia
Malvasia,
laziale,
di
detta
Malvasia
anche, che poi altro
laziale,
non è che la Malvasia
also
puntinata.
called
Due parole sulla
Malvasia
Malvasia, visto che poi la
puntinata.
troveremo in
Let me
tutti
spend about
che
Malvasia,
andiamo a
as we will
degustare.
find it in all
La
the
Malvasia
wines we are about to
puntinata
taste.
è
Malvasia
un'uva
puntinata
molto
is a
sensibile,
variety that is
molto
very
delicata,
sensitive, very delicate,
ha un
and
acino
has
puntinata perché
it's
ha un
called the
acino
puntinata
che si
because it
presenta
has
con piccoli
berries
puntini
that
grigi.
has little
Anche in
gray
un
dots,
vigneto viene subito
and
identificata.
so you can immediately
Questa
spot it in a vineyard.
aveva però il fosse così sensibile,
So
quando io dico sensibile, dico
when I say
sensibile alle
sensitive, I
malattie
mean
che la pianta
sensitive
poteva
to
prendere.
pests and diseases.
Negli anni
Over
tutto
the
lì l'abbiamo
years,
sostituita con delle uve più
it was
vigorose,
replaced with
come il
stronger
Trebbiano,
varieties,
Trebbiano verde,
such as
Trebbiano
Trebbiano,
giallo,
Trebbiano,
ma
Green
la stessa
Trebbiano, Yellow
Malvasia di
Trebbiano,
Candia,
but also
che
Malvasia di Candia
invece è
itself,
un'uva di una qualità
which is
più bassa, permettetemi, cioè di
lower
quella
quality
della
variety
puntinata,
than Malvasia
ma
puntinata,
sicuramente molto più
but
forte,
actually
molto
much
più
stronger,
vigorosa.
more robust and
Che cosa ha
vigorous.
fatto la DOCG?
And
La
so
DOCG
what
ha
did the OCG do?
riequilibrato quella
Balanced
che è
off
l'unicità, la territorialità e il vitigno autoctono del
the
luogo. E
unicity,
autoctono si intende
typicality
vitigno autoctono,
of
cioè
this indigenous
tradizionale, tradizionale di quel
traditional
posto, come lo è la
indigenous
Malvasia
variety,
puntinata.
such as Malvasia puntinata.
Quindi molte aziende
many
hanno
wineries
rimpiantato, perché gli sono stati dati
replanted
dei aiuti per poterlo fare,
because they
dei fondi per
received
poterlo fare, proprio
subsidies
per
and funds
cercare di
to do so.
riavere quella che è la qualità, ma
Restore and
soprattutto quella che
increase
è
the quality
l'unicità
and
che
the
poteva avere il
uniqueness
Frascati con
and
la Malvasia
typicality of
Pontinato.
Frascati with
Quindi noi
Malvasia
troviamo come
Pontinato.
base per
And
tutti i
so
Frascati
the
superiore,
base
poi
for
avremo
all
anche 2
Frascati
riserva nella
superiore, and also
degustazione,
we'll taste
anche
2
quello
riserva,
che
and
è
we will
l'unicità di questa uva,
really we can
molto
really appreciate
sensibile,
the
molto
uniqueness of
delicata,
these
con
grapes,
questa
very
patina
delicate,
un po' pruinosa
with
che abbiamo,
this
con la quale si presenta. È un acino
layer
comunque molto compatto,
that
e
is,
voi
and the
sapete che gli
bunches
acini
are
compatti
very
ce la possono fare quando si trovano in una zona molto
compact,
asciutta, e qui vi ho
and
detto che c'è pochissima umidità,
compact
quindi non
bunches
avendo umidità
can
non
survive
soffre,
in areas
e la
without
vigoria da questo
dampness,
punto di
without
vista
humidity.
può essere superiore, e riesce a fargli superare anche, diciamo così, degli inverni un po' più pioviginosi. Ok.
Rainy winters.
Qual è la sua
So
particolarità?
what is the
È un'uva
typical character of these grapes?
di origine che rientra nella categoria delle uve aromatiche. Le uve aromatiche sono le prime che noi ci ricorderemo, perché la aromatica è quella che subito ci affascina, è quella più facile da ricordare. Io quando facevo i corsi per far ricordare agli alunni che c'erano
When I was
i
teaching in
sapori,
courses,
gli odori dell'uva, noi
to
andavamo
make students
sulle uve
recall the
aromatiche. Ma
various
perché? Perché sono degli
nuances,
odori
and
cosiddetti primari. Io sento
we
la
would
frutta,
use
sento
aromatic
il sapore,
because you can
sento quella parte
definitely
anche più
perceive the
vinosa,
fruit,
no?
the more vinous
nel bicchiere,
component
ed è la più
in the glass.
semplice, perché poi
And it's the
secondari,
simplest to recall because then
terziari,
secondary and
andremo a
tertiary
vedere in alcuni di
aromas,
questi la mineralità come
so
si
the
traduce,
so-called minerality,
invece diventano molto
are
più
harder
difficili.
to
È un
distinguish.
vino comunque, è un
In
bianco
any case,
secco
this is
che tira
dry white wine
fuori, come
that
vedete, un grandissimo naso,
has
e
outstanding nose
ci affascina
and
subito.
is
È un vino
immediately
verticale,
very
l'avete degustato?
fascinating.
Immagino di sì.
It's a vertical wine.
Allora, la cosa che mi ha colpito quando ho assaggiato questo vino qua
First thing that struck
è
me
anche
when I
come vedere
tasted
come
this wine
stanno iniziando a
is,
lavorare con, essendo comunque un Frascati, non dimentichiamo, DOCG
since
superiore,
Frascati
anche
is
sulla
a
gradazione
DOCG
alcolica,
superiore,
12 gradi e mezzo.
so it's the alcohol
Hanno tutte delle
content,
gradazioni
12.5%.
molto elevate, i vini che poi
So
andremo a
the alcohol
degustare.
content of these wines are
Sentite
not
come
too high,
la bocca
but on the
mi tira
palate,
fuori la nella parte
I
esterna
mean, the
del mio
palate
palato.
salivates in the outer part of
Sentite
the
come la
palate,
freschezza
and
del
also
frutto
the
esce
freshness of
fuori,
the
in questo
fruit
particolare dei fiori
is
bianchi
very
che mi
evident,
tira
especially with
fuori
white
questo
flower
vino. L'ho messo all'inizio
flowers,
perché quello che ha questa
and
freschezza
I
più
decided to taste it
garbata,
first because
più
it has very
gradevole,
gentle
anche molto più facile
freshness,
alla beva.
and
E
also
quando dico
easier.
facile,
And when I
non
say easier to
dico
drink,
scontato.
I don't mean
Scontato è
obvious.
un'altra cosa. Sembra
Obvious is
quasi che
different,
noi nel mondo del vino
because
abbiamo
it's
paura
as
di dire
if we
questa
are
parola,
afraid of
quando è un vino
saying that
molto,
word
molto
when
easy,
a
molto
wine is
friendly.
very
Invece no, è proprio così. È un vino
on the
che
contrary,
tu lo bevi,
that's true
finisce
of
la
this
bottiglia,
wine. So
quasi non
you
te ne sei
drink
reso
it, you
conto.
almost don't
Questo si
realize the
traduce in
bottle is over.
piacevolezza.
And this means it's
È
a
un
very
vino che
pleasant
sicuramente
wine.
va bevuto molto
And
giovane.
certainly
È
you
un
have
vino che,
to
come
drink it
vedete, ha
young.
una bocca
And as you can tell,
che non è poi
the
così
palate
lunga al
isn't very
palato,
lingering
ok?
on the
Cioè mi dà
palate.
tutto più nella parte
So
iniziale,
it's,
molto meno nella
the
parte
beginning
finale.
is much stronger
Cosa
than the
posso
finish.
dire? Questo vino, fra
What
l'altro,
can
per
I say?
alcuni mercati ha
In
anche
some
la
markets, this
certificazione
wine
vegana.
also has
Ad
the
oggi
vegan
il mercato
certification.
della Danimarca
Because, for
lo
instance, the
acquista solo
Danish
con la
market
certificazione
buys it
vegana.
only with the
E
vegan
da oltre 6
certification.
anni
And
nell'azienda,
over the last 6
tutta
years,
l'energia usata
all the
viene da
energy power they use comes from renewable
Questo è anche un
sources.
dato molto
And this is also
interessante in
very
questa zona
interesting
per i
in this
produttori,
area for
perché si sta
wineries,
veramente dando
because they are
molto su quello che
working
è la
hard
sostenibilità,
to
ma come dico
improve the
io, che è una parola ad
sustainability
oggi davvero
of
molto
their
abusata,
production, and
anche su
also
quella che è
they
invece
are
un'altra
working
parola che
hard
dovremmo iniziare ad
on
usare, che è
another
la
word that
durabilità.
is very
Cioè
important.
noi
That is to
siamo
say
sostenibili
durability,
oggi
because we are
per
sustainable
essere,
today so
per
that
avere
we
la
can be
durabilità
durable
domani.
tomorrow.
Questo è un concetto
And
molto
this is a very
importante che
important
loro, alcune
notion
aziende,
that some of
stanno
the wineries
iniziando
are
a
starting
usare
to
e a
use
mettere appunto
and
in pratica.
and
Allora,
implement.
un altro argomento che poi io dirò
So
per ogni azienda
another
è quello
topic which is very important for all of these
dell'accoglienza. Perché Frascati, avendo
wineries
questa
is
vicinanza
hospitality,
con Roma,
because
pochissimi
Frascati is close to
chilometri,
Rome,
stanno
a few
iniziando,
kilometers from
che
Rome,
io avrei pensato
and
fosse iniziata molto prima,
I thought
visto la
actually they
vicinanza con
started much
Roma,
earlier
stanno
since they're so close
iniziando
to Rome, but
invece
they
con
are
un po' di
starting
ritardo
a little
ad
late, I have
avere
to say, to
un'accoglienza nelle loro
welcome
aziende.
tourists to
Loro,
the
per quanto riguarda la San
wineries.
Marco, per loro
And for
fanno una
San
cosa
Marco,
molto
for instance,
divertente,
they
con la
do
quale tu ti
something
puoi
that is
iscrivere tramite il loro
very
sito, che è quello di
interesting, and you can
partecipare e
subscribe.
vivere con loro
So
la
you can
vendemmia.
participate and you
Quindi puoi
can
essere
experience the
attivo
harvest
durante la
time with them. So
vendemmia
you can
e insieme a
participate in the
loro.
harvest
Loro hanno
with them.
un'enoteca e
They have
ristorante che è
a wine
ricavato
bar,
nella
an
parte più
enoteca,
vecchia
and
dell'azienda.
a
Qui ci sono
restaurant
zone
in
tufate, il tufo è molto
most ancient
presente.
part
La Vinoteca San
of the
Marco, che
company, and
organizza
this
tantissime
the
degustazioni, ad
Vinoteca
oggi
San
poi
Marco,
vedrete pochissimi fanno
they organize a lot of
un'accoglienza
tastings,
per
and
poter
not
dormire,
many have
ma
the
invece
hospitality
fanno
section,
tantissime attività
but they
proprio
organize plenty of
ricettive.
activities where
Secondo
they
vino. Secondo vino
welcome
ha
people
un
to spend time with them.
legame
The
con
second wine
il primo
is
vino, con
is
le San Marco.
related
Perché?
to the San
Perché è la
Marco
stessa
wine,
proprietà.
because owners are the
È la
same.
stessa proprietà.
So same owner,
Praticamente a un certo
and
punto,
at a
agli
certain
anni
point in the
80, e fra
1980s,
l'84 e l'86 mi
between
dicevano, dà
84 and
vita
86,
all'olivella. Cioè
they
l'olivella è
started
stato il
producing
primo
olivella.
vitigno,
Olivella
primo,
was the
scusate,
first plot
vitivinicolo sperimentale
that was an
che
experimental plot,
la
a test plot
Tenuta San Marco ha
that Tenuta
fatto.
San Marco
Quando ho iniziato a
decided to
vedere
create.
l'unicità di
And
tutto questo,
so
ha
when they
diversificato
saw
le
that the
due
wine was
aziende.
very
Quindi qui abbiamo
unique and
azienda
distinctive,
agricola
they
l'olivella
split
e
the
invece la
wineries.
prima
So
è
we
Cantina San
have
Marco.
Olivella on
La
the one side
famiglia
and
è la
Cantina San
stessa,
Marco on
sono
the
gli
other.
stessi
The owners
proprietari
are the
che poi
same,
hanno voluto
but
fare
they
questo
decided
tipo
then
di lavoro
to just
perché proprio
split
per
their production
dare ancora
so
di
as
più
to
risalto a questo appezzamento
even more
sperimentale
this
che era ancora
experimental
molto
plot
lontano dalla
that was still
DOCG
far from the
con questo vino,
DOCG
questo in
with this
particolare
wine.
che è
And
il
this wine in
racemo.
particular, which
Se
is
non l'ho
called
detto,
racemo.
tutte le annate dei primi 4 vini
All the
sono
years of the first
2021.
wines
Stiamo
are
parlando per tutti i
2021.
primi 4 vini
So
dell'annata
they are all
2021.
2021.
Ok, anche qui gradazione alcolica,
And here, alcohol
12 gradi e
content,
mezzo. Intanto
12,
vi dico una cosa
0.5
molto
degrees.
interessante. Loro
And
qui hanno iniziato
first of all, they
subito a fare
started
un
immediately
lavoro
to
insieme ad un
work
vulcanologo,
with
ad
a
un
volcanologist and a
geologo, proprio per
geologist
cercare di mappare
to try and
questo
map out
territorio.
this territory.
L'annata 2021
And,
in particolare, lo dico
2021
qui, ma
in
poi accomuna un
particular,
po' tutti,
which
è estremamente
is common to all of
interessante
these wines,
dal
was
punto di
extremely
vista
interesting
meteorologico,
from
perché è
the
un'annata dare
standpoint of the weather,
moltissimo equilibrio
because it
anche nei momenti
was
in
very
cui
balanced,
sono arrivate le piogge
also
e i momenti
when
di
there
siccità.
was rain.
Questo ha fatto sì che questo
Good balance
equilibrio,
between rain
al di
and
là
dry
della
weather.
cifra
And therefore
stilistica
this good
che
balance,
ritroverete in
then
ognuno di
besides
loro,
the specific
voi
personality of
riuscirete
each
a
wine,
percepire.
you will be able to perceive this specific weather condition.
Equilibrio? Assolutamente, se non l'avete
It's
assaggiato,
very
assaggiatelo,
balanced.
adesso
If you
assaggiamo
haven't
insieme a voi.
tasted it, please taste it.
Allora, sentite già come
So you can
quella
immediately
freschezza che vi
perceive
dicevo
the freshness I
del
talked
primo
about
vino
at
di
the beginning
BioWine,
for bio
molto
wine,
più
first wine,
ampia,
which was
molto
much
più
more ample and
floreale,
floral.
qui già sta iniziando a
Here
cambiare.
starts to
Ok?
change.
Loro da quando c'è stata la prima annata
From when they had the
del
first year, so
racemo
the
ad
first
oggi,
harvest of
non hanno
racemo
cambiato
and
praticamente
today,
nulla.
they
Tenevano
haven't
questa
changed anything.
bottiglia
So they kept
e,
these
come vedete, è
bottles,
l'unica diversa
and
da tutte
as
le
you
altre
can
che
tell,
possono molto più
it's
simili a
different
delle
from all others, which
bordolesi
are more
alte, bordolesi
similar
con una
to the
spalla più
Bordeaux bottles,
marcata o più scesa. Loro
higher
invece hanno
or
tenuto questa
lower or more flared or
borgognotta.
less flared, but
L'hanno
they
avuto nella
used
prima
the
annata, hanno continuato a
Bourgogne
tenerla fino ad oggi.
bottle from
Perché
the
si
first
chiama
year until now.
racemo?
Why is it called
Racemo è
racemo?
una pratica
Racemo
tipica
is a typical
del sud Italia.
practice in
Dicevo che uno
southern
dei
Italy,
due proprietari è
and one of the
pugliese.
two owners is from Puglia.
Il racemo è
So
praticamente quando
racemo
si
means
entrava
when
nel vigneto
you would go to the vineyard
3-4 volte
many
la stessa
times,
vendemmia.
3 or 4 times during harvest, because before there were mixed varieties. So in the same row you could have Bombino or Trebbiano and the Malvasia puntinata, Malvasia di Candia all together. And there were also red berry grapes. And so the Remo was like the last part of the harvest in the vineyard that was used for house wine. And so they were selling they were using loose bunches to make the home wine, the house wine, that then was drunk by the farmers and was not sold to customers. So as to the soil composition here, changes a lot. So these vineyards are very close. They are almost 500 meters away, one from the other. And as far as Racemo, the vineyards are in a place with 3 different lava cycles of hundreds of years apart. So it's very fragmented. And then there is basalt that separates the plot from the vineyard of about half a meter. So, I mean, we find the more earthy part, and then after half a meter, the roots spread in the more basaltic part, which is very mineral. I'm sure you can perceive the fruit already, the more floral part that is there, but it's overwhelmed by a more mineral part. So this is a wine that can age well for many years, and also I haven't tasted all the vintages, but 6, 7 years before. So there's this transformation of the lean part, this basaltic part, that truly gives this sense of hydrocarbons. And again, there is an alcohol content that is pretty low. So this wine is complex, that we start to perceive in its complexity, and it's only 12.5 degrees.
Another interesting thing to say about this terroir is the fact that the lava flows and the eruption material absorb water in winter, so they collect water, and it's like it's like in the mineral areas you have a sort of ampoules to collect water. So also during drought periods, well, the lava is not so much absorbing, so these areas collect water and they use it during drought periods. So
nota che dirò è che così ci mettete, lo osservate.
And
Componente vulcanica.
the volcanic component makes one thing on the wines, makes you perceive less the alcohol content. So this freshness, this mineral approach, this alcohol content that you will find in other wines, this is mitigated here by the terroir. If you think of other wines like so that maybe you have already tasted, well, thanks to the composition of this terroir. This is all about this. And it's thanks to this volcanic rock that, in this case, the alcohol content is mitigated, becoming second in a certain way. Here, the Azienda Vinicola Oliva is a farm, tourist farm, opening a restaurant from June to September, holiday farm, and Consorzio takes care of enogastronomy tours and enogastronomy tourism. So to make also people understand, users understand, and consumers understand that it is very much important to visit this area because here we have a very beautiful area with accommodations that are available, quality accommodations, very good food. So I don't know whether you've been in Rome, and in Rome people on weekends go to the so-called FRASCATI. So these are sort of small restaurants where the people stop and could be welcome, and these were on the hills. And so they could stay there on these fraschette. And these were recognized because was no sign, but because there was a bunch of grape of grape shoots there. And these fraschette have become very tourist today, and you there you to eat and drink wine of the produced in that same area, and the tourism is a shop and go, and instead now the area is concentrating on prolonging the stay of tourists in the area by providing more services. And so also schools are invited to go there and live, for example, one full day in a winery. So third wine, this is called Heredio. So what can I say about this name? This comes from Latin, and it means this refers to a Roman unit of measurement. And, when a piece of land was passed on from father to son. And, this is both the empire and the Roman Republic were staying in these areas. Well, they wanted to recall this name on the label. So here we have a company, a wine producer. This is in the fifth generation, and the Gasperina family, and the fifth generation is in the hands of Giulio Gasperini. And what I was talking about earlier on regarding Frascati, of course, also in this case, we have this important factor that tourist destinations, that these have become tourist destinations. And on the hills, they were trading. They were trading with the wine cart, and so they were filling with wine bottles these carts, and they were going to Rome, selling the wine to the aristocrats, to the hosts and restaurants, etc. And in fact, as a matter of fact, the cart, the winery owner was saying, is still a symbol. They produce approximately labels and Frascati to, and this is the Frascati Superiore. So here we have this wine is 13.5 degrees in terms of alcohol content. And so this is, again, Malvasia Pontinata and Bellone. Bellone is another type of grape, white berry, and a very vigorous wine. It is grown very frequently because it's very healthy and it's productive. And as a matter of fact, and this type of and it provides also freshness and also it provides that fruity flavor to the wine. And Malvasia Pontinata and Bellone and others, and in this case we have Ghetto. So here the area is very special, and it is a very special area for an historic event. In 1567 we had the Pontifice Guards against Barbarossa. So Barbarossa wanted to conquer Rome, and the Vatican guards were defending their location. And so, and this is why we can say the morphology of this area changed over time. Before being a lake, it was a crater, and it was a space where a volcano was located. And the vineyards of Reglio are at the very border of the crater, and which today so-called Regillo Lake. So very beautiful area to visit because the volcanic lakes are so beautiful. So they are round because of the crater, and this area is very rich in these okay. So they did a very good job on the terroirs, volcanology, and they also cooperate with the universities and with certifying entities in order to understand what this terroir can give. And when these producers talk, they say, well, this is not a new discovery. These terroirs have always produced great wines, and actually it was us. We didn't think of quality. We didn't have the specifications. We weren't enough. And then in 2011, the Bella and another wine started believing in a quality project. So here we have 70%. So here we have 50% Malvasia. With the radio, we have 70% of Pontinata plus Greco and a little bit of Bombino. And here, and I want you to taste it. I invite you to taste it.
Allora, questo vino lo metto
So this wine is halfway because it is unique. So wine has special features, but this is unique indeed. And we have also a balsamic menthol note. And it's very rich in the mouth and greasy in the mouth. And won't find this note in the wines. Eradio gives it to us. And in the mouth, the perception is very long. Definitely 70% of grapes plays a major role. And also so here we have from 8 to 10 hours of cryomaceration. And here we have even up to 12 hours of cryomaceration. So acidity, freshness, balsamic note, and Greco provides a further initial push, supporting Malvasia and to recall all those flavors in the mouth to create balance. This wine was not called Eradio in the past. It was first produced in 1952 by the name of Valle Chiesa. Then they started understanding that it had a very great potential. The company invested a lot with Bruno Gasperini, the generation. When he entered the company, he joined the company, he restarted the company, still keeping in mind the legacy of the wine. This wine is very strong, but it can also be considered a classic. Talks a lot about the area in which it is produced, that location, the wines of those regions between the volcanic lake, the mineral land, 70% of Malvasia. So the signature, you see the signature which each winery gives. This is a wine that would never fall as a trend, and I can tell you that this balsamic note of the years that we can perceive menthol and perceive licorice. So we have those winds. We have so this is very unique. And what I would like you to understand is that the Frascati area is great thanks as a result of the fragmentation of this soil. Because they're saying that this is just a volcanic area, this is not enough. And so therefore we have experience. They also work with the experiences and private events.
So we have wine number 4. So wine number 4 is Villa Simone. Villa dei Preti 2021. Villa dei Preti comes from an insight of Piero Costantini. Costantini is a very important wine expert. He is also the owner of one of the largest Enoteca wine bar in Rome, in Piazza Cavour. And in the 1980s, he started to think that there was more focus on quantity. Said in this area, great wines can be made. Nothing pretty similar to the wines from northeastern Italy. And he bought these vineyards from the wines owned by Cardinal Pallotta, because wines drank by the priests and the religious people, well, they all had private vineyards where they would use to make wine in their houses. So he bought wines there, and then like Villa dei Preti, he bought between the 90s this vineyard, Villa dei Preti, appunto. Villa dei Preti. E lo acquista anche del Sacro Cuore di Gesù. He bought it from the priests, the community called the Sacro Cuore di Gesù, because many of the plots are still owned by the church. Because, as I told you earlier, this land was owned by popes and cardinals, etc. So the this is Vecchio, and in Frascati, a lot of work was done to map all the various communities, all the various name places. And these vineyards are at 300 meters, and so that's the most part of the hills, from 300 to 500 meters. This is the plot where they replanted more Malvasia puntinata, because, as I told you, the winemakers here replanted these vineyards with Malvasia puntinata to increase the quality of Frascati, to make Frascati Superiore DOCG. They work with a philosophy which is based on olfactory fineness and elegance, a little bit to the detriment of the body, because the third one had a more powerful body than this one. But the elegance of this wine is truly outstanding. They also have a certification. Actually, they are not organic, but they have a sustainability certification. They were amongst the first in Frascati, and they use very little copper, as few as treatments as possible. So they try to touch the vineyard as little as possible. And above all, they work with they also try to save water, and they work to enhance the sustainability. So they say they are not organic, but they work a lot with a philosophy very much revolving around sustainability and durability. So let's now move to the last two wines, the fifth and sixth, that are we change the year. These two are 2020. The alcohol content is around 13.5. So let's taste the Cantina Villafranca. Cantina Villafranca is an historical winery of the area of Frascati. And a few years ago, they invested, some new investors joined. And so this project, these investors are Cavim, which means like a group of from Emilia-Romagna. They have always paid a lot of attention to local varieties such as Pignoletto, Sangiovese, and they've always invested in Latium. So this winery has always invested in Latium, and this collaboration dates back to 2 years. And this collaboration pays a lot of respect to the place. They're working a lot to make CG wines. So the brand was developed by Cavin and Villafranca. And the brand is called Vie, the Italian term, it's VIAE, which means roads, and inspired from the Roman roads. This is the only label that has not yet this Vie brand yet, because they have just started work on Riserva to restyle the bottle, and so they couldn't send us the bottle with the new Vie brand that is from Cavim and Villafranca wines. Before talking about this wine, I'd like to say that Frascati sells very well abroad. And on the contrary, Villafranca has always tried to sell on the local market, so Italian market, local market. They have a huge potential. And to date, they make about 700,000 bottles. Villa Simone makes 150,000, this 300,000, 250,000. So 700,000 is a medium-sized winery, even though there are many wineries who make in the area that make more bottles. In any case, out of 700,000 bottles, they just expect 150,000. Because they want to work a lot on the quality of Frascati Superiore as a Riserva to sell it abroad, especially to restaurants. They expect they can increase their production tenfold for Frascati Superiore Riserva. They are working hard in the region and at the winery itself. They organize many tastings with foreigners, and it's a collaboration that they have started so they focus on with foreign countries and a lot with the Roman restaurants. And so, for instance, they organize also tasting, for instance, for Asian people or Europeans, East Europeans, West Europeans. So they're working very much on these tastings. Certainly, they are helped because they live close to Rome, and of course, Rome attracts many, many tourists. However, they're working very hard to do a great job with them. And this wine for Malvasia Puntinata, they are very old, 30-35-year-old vineyards, and they take 8 per hectare. This is Malvasia Puntinata, Greco, and Bombino. This is the only bottle that is kept in a barrel with and so it's yellowish, it's more golden amber yellow, and it's a wine that can last 4 or 5 years. They don't want to age it, even though there are other producers who age their wines for longer, and they are quite interesting, I have to say. Then salinity, this is a very saline wine. Salinity helps a lot in this respect and mitigates the alcohol content. As far as I'm concerned, if I taste wines kept in barrels, not kept in barrels, I prefer those that are not kept in barrels because this territory has a lot to tell us. It has a lot of, this saline character, the volcanic nuances, the aromatic varieties. And I think that then, of course, we all like different wines. I think that the style, also without wood, is very, very satisfactory.
Ultimo vino.
This is the last one, called Sesto Ventuno. Sesto Ventuno is a winery in Monte Porzio Catone. They have a single plot of about 25 hectares. And the beauty about it is the fragmentation of the land just in a single vineyard. Sesto Ventuno is the name of the label and this wine, but it's also a project because at Sesto Ventuno, unlike the others, they have many international varieties, and they are very famous with Syrah, which, by the way, in 2019 was the first prize for Syrah du Monde, and they're also very much appreciated with Syrah, but also with Sauvignon. And then a new project, they told me I can about that. They are working with a Chardonnay that is ready in 2 years. Chardonnay isn't much used in this area, but they decided to do so. And then Sesto Ventuno, so Sesto Ventuno is inspired from the sixth portion of the winery, and then two, because there are two vineyards on this plot, and then there is 1 meter across each row. So that's why they called it Sesto Ventuno. So they make this Frascati Superiore Riserva. It's a winery that has always stood out for quality, and so they make a DOC with Frascati, and so they are in the Via di Fontana Candida. I don't know if you know the area. However, what is the problem when I talk to them and other producers? There is a sort of bias. So more focus on quantity than quality. So what's the challenge today? The challenge today for them is to make consumers buy and choose Frascati Superiore DOCG, because taste it when they understand the uniqueness of this wine and understand the unique territory, but so fragmented that is very interesting, because you have many different wineries, different areas, wineries that are down in the plain, then also others on hills at 500 meters. So the trouble today is to make consumers and customers buy and open these bottles. And this is also why we have organized this tasting at Milano 1 week. But especially in Milan, because today Milan is very open in wine lists, very open to Frascati, and above all, Frascati Superiore DOCG. And this is also because over the last 5 to 6 years, restaurants are open with the Roman style food, and they opened restaurants here in Milan. So people in Milan have no bias like Romans who have used the Frascati like in the big 2-liter bottles or just drank at home. So since they don't have this barrier, this sort of bias, people in Milan are more open to taste this wine. And so that's probably why also abroad, Frascati and Frascati DOCG very much appreciated.
questo ultimo vino.
So let's close with the last wine. Why did I put it after the one that was kept in barrels? Well, because this wine is very fresh and has a small percentage of Trebbiano grapes, together with Bombino, Malvasia di Candia, and Malvasia puntinata. Most of it, of the blend, is Malvasia puntinata.
L'azienda fa fra
So the winery makes 500,000 bottles, and it's kept 3 months in the stainless steel, and then it's aged in bottles. It's very made, and they use a Guyot training system. So late, but actually we started late. So if you have questions, I'm available to answer. What I just wanted was to present the territory and the Consorzio Frascati wines, and to understand their approach and the direction that they have taken, and make you understand how important it is. Because, sometimes the history is very important, because we Italian Europeans, we have a very important history behind. But sometimes this can become a barrier, because things can happen, and therefore this can create some troubles and some biases. And so sometimes so we have some like dark years that create a sort of bias. However, it's important to understand how these winemakers are working and how well they are working with hospitality and tourism, and how many people have come back to this area, and the variety of these volcanic soils. And so you can say that Frascati wines are the wines from Rome, but these territories so wide and multifaceted, such that each wine is very different. And you can see to what extent an aromatic variety such as Malvasia can be used to make wines, and that can have a good aging. Thank you very much for attending my tasting. Thank you.